If you're a Genshin Impact player, same, and you're probably wondering if
Wow.
Nice.
Tower of Fantasy is just clone Genshin Impact. Someone said Tower of Fantasy is a messy Genshin Impact with few ideas of its owner. If you're going to be bored playing because you already went to play for Genshin Impact and you want to play another game like Tower of Fantasy. Get it? I had the same thoughts when I first downloaded Tower of Fantasy, and I'm gonna do my best today to share you the honest thought and impression on these two different games. So you can make up your mind as to whether Tower of Fantasy is worth for you or if you're just gonna stick with Genshin. First up, they are both gacha games which depend on your wallet, luck, and times. And other various gacha game playing factors. It'll really depend on if you can fit Tower Fantasy into your gaming schedule, because let's face it, with how much content Genshin gets and the primo grind, there are only so many hours left in the day for other games like Tower of Fantasy. Let's take a look at the combat. Well, granted some of the animations may look similar. The power sets have a different dynamic to them in Genshin. You run around with the squad and the people you play as are the ones with the power, and you just give them whatever weapons you can find that'll help buff their abilities. However, in Tower Fantasy, it's more action and combo oriented. Tower of Fantasy focuses more on freedom of movement and intense combat, allowing players to string together a series of combos both on the ground and in the air alongside weapon skills and perfect dodging. Genshin leans deeper into its elemental system and swapping characters in order to trigger certain reactions, while Tower of Fantasy's weapon swaps allow you to further extend combos or take advantage of debuffs and weapon effects. A distinguishing combat feature from Genshin Impact are Tower of Fantasy's aerial attacks. Most weapons even have a launch attack that can send enemies skyward, allowing the player to continue their combo string in the air. Aerial attacks do consume stamina, unlike ground attacks, so they are not indefinite, but juggling multiple enemies in Tower of Fantasy is entirely possible. Let's talk about exploration. Tower of Fantasy's exploration gives better rewards than in Genshin Impact. It is because you can get a single roll when getting specific treasure chests in Tower of Fantasy. Genshin's treasure chests only give 2 to 30 primo gems, depending on the rarity of the treasure chest, which is hardly enough to do a single pull. In Genshin Impact, the only means for long-distance travel are the wing glider and the teleport waypoints. Tower of Fantasy offers tons of ways to travel and explore in the open world, like the motorcycle mount, jetpack, and more. Well, in Tower of Fantasy it's more of a rocket boost thing, but it's the same general concept. However, Tower Fantasy has two additional things. For character customization, it's important to note that with Genshin you have a set character, either Lumen or Ether, and then various companions you pick up along the way also have their set appearances. We are slowly getting different outfits for some of the characters, but otherwise what you see is what you get. Unlike Genshin, Tower of Fantasy has a fully owned character, can be customized basically however you'd like within the character creation system, as well as a variety of extra outfits to change them into. It's a big deal if you've never liked having to play as Hoyoverse mostly silent protagonists. Here you can make anyone you want, although a lot of people are just trying to make Genshin characters. And you can change that stuff up even, but after you get started into the game, that making it have a more personalized vibe to it if you're looking for a more of a role-playing aspect within the game. Please note though that currently you can't change the appearance of a simulacra, just your own personal character. There is though an alternate appearance you can eventually unlock for the SSR. Not to mention the main character voice acting. When it comes to Lumen and Ether, most of the time Paimon does all the talking for us and you very rarely talk, whereas in Tower Fantasy you actually talk for yourself, which in my opinion is pretty awesome. But otherwise it's just your character on the field switching between weapons. You can have up to 3 weapons on you with 3 different loadout slots, whereas Genshin Impact it's 4 people in a squad. So 4 power sets with 4 different loadouts available to you. Both games have various ways to buff and level the abilities of the weapons / characters, but how you roll through them will of course vary from build to build and also game to game. I like the difference between the two and how building out your characters and weapons are going to be different. Tower Fantasy has different mechanics than Genshin Impact in that regard, with Tower Fantasy having matrices and Genshin having artifacts. This will keep combat feeling fresh between the two games, and personally I can then jump in between and play whatever I want my brain is at the moment. What makes Tower of Fantasy better than Genshin when it comes to its multiplayer feature is that it has a guild system. The number of players in co-op mode can exceed 4, and the in-death rolls each player can have. Although both are fun on their own, Tower of Fantasy has an overwhelming number of features that players may find more enjoyable. With Genshin you get this big overarching plot field right away given how the story opens, which gives a really nice variety between the two. Both games though have an intriguing and colorful set of characters to interact with, and both starting areas feel like great areas to learn the basics of the game functions in while still feeling like you're playing the game as opposed to just being in a tutorial zone. Whereas Tower of Fantasy is more of a sci-fi themed game, its story revolves around the two factions, heirs of Ida and Hykros, in the post-apocalyptic era of planet Ida. Both groups have their own goal, which is about the existence of omnium that causes them to clash, thus creating more chaos and turmoil on the planet. Then let's quickly talk about environment, and in Genshin the world is yours, unless you invite someone in, so it really doesn't matter if you're a solo player or you want to play with friends, as it's very easy to switch between the two. However, in Tower Fantasy you're in an instance with other players running around your world. You can't necessarily interact with them like you could in a traditional MMO as far as I can tell so far. But you can group up to do world bosses group content as well, and there's even PvP. There's even a world chat feature similar to traditional MMO, so if you're someone that is a hardcore solo player, this is definitely something to consider before playing. And one final note on this though is that the game does put you in what is called a story instance, and you'll kind of see it briefly pop up on screen when you're doing certain story things so other players can't come in and interrupt it and ruin your immersion. And lastly, let's talk about Mia versus Paimon. If you've been on stream before, you'll know I'm 100% team Paimon, and I love her and what she brings to the story with comedic relief, her knowledge, etc. And now we have Mia in Tower Fantasy, who's this AI robot that was fixed up and is now helping you along the way. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about Mia yet, but I will tell you this: she's adorable and has to be protected at all costs. Overall, both games are unique in their own ways, but also similar to each other in others. There isn't going to be a right or wrong as to which game you prefer to play, and you could be like me and actually just play both of them, because both are fantastic games. And that's gonna be it for me today. Hopefully this helped if you were either trying to decide what game to play or just trying to get a feel for one of these two different games. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next vid. Bye!